I think as a gay man, I would be lynched for that. So I'm just diving straight in here. On maths, I spent a fortune. I had a lot of straight men message me, you want to wear a pair of heels? I'll show you how to walk in them.
Hello and welcome to The Spills, a new pop culture and reality chat show from Gay Star News. My name is Helen Meriel Thomas and today I'm joined by Adrian Sanderson from Married at First Sight Season 7. So thank you very much, Adrian, for coming in.
Thanks. I didn't know it was Season 7. Because in my head it's Season 2. Because the UK one, they sort of did like they swung it towards the Australian one, didn't they?
Yeah, there's like first gen Married at First Sight and second gen Married at First Sight.
Do you know what? I've never watched the first one, and supposedly it's amazing.
It's
a
really
proper doc.
Yeah, it's much more like a early noughties weird documentary vibe. And I guess like what's interesting about Maths is it's kind of one of the only reality shows that really pins itself as like scientific, which I also find quite funny.
Do you know what though? It's right. So I'm just diving straight in here. Sorry. So if you're there in it, right, it is an experiment, and it's so interesting just to watch all the other couples and how they're communicating and how they are on camera to off. Like it's so interesting as a person just being in that scenario, and then when it comes on TV, it's almost a little bit like, oh, it was better than that in reality.
Okay.
Maths has had a lot of controversy around, like, is it fake? Is it not? I'm very clear in my opinion on it. I think it's worse than what it is. And people say, like, the producers try and get you. No, I think that a lot of the time you have a lot of people who really want that time on camera. So they really go hell for leather the second it's rolling in order to get airtime.
Obviously, as a queer person going on Maths, it's not like it's a gay dating show. Like you are going into a very hetero environment and you know, also very sort of traditional environment as well, because it's marriage, it's very monogamous. And that doesn't necessarily reflect all queer couples, it reflects some. But how did you feel going into such a sort of straight environment?
I never was treated any differently, felt any differently. We weren't the queer couple, Jenna and Zoe weren't the lesbians, we weren't the gays. It was never that. That's it. And you're very separated into the husbands and the wives.
Right.
And that, like, I could go into that, definitely. That's not great, but it is what it is. And they do sort of like stereotype, like, all the boys will have beers and the girls will have Prosecco. And I'm like, oh, hang on, well, I want a gin. So can I get a gin? I don't want to. But they were very, like, always like, Thomas, Adrian, do you want to go with the husbands today? Do you want to go with the wives? Also, there's when you're gay or queer, who is going to be the person stood at the aisle, which is typically the male role. And they asked which I would prefer. And I had said I didn't mind, where I know since he was very specific on he wanted, because he ends up with fucking horse and carriage, didn't he, the dickhead? But yeah, so, which actually caused me to be locked in a bathroom for an hour because I was not allowed to have any windows in the room I was in because they didn't want me to see the horse and carriage.
Oh my God. Did you feel comfortable with kind of being put in that more masculine role in order for your relationship to fit the dynamics that the show requires?
I've never been asked that before. I don't know if I thought of it that way. I just knew that being with the husbands was much safer than being with the wives. So I kind of preferred going with the husbands because the wives had a lot more going on. There was a lot more catty, bitchy, gossipy problems, half of them caused by my husband, or at least he was involved in them. I wouldn't say he caused them all. I also quite enjoyed being put into that masculine environment. I don't think sometimes it's like, oh, Adrian, you want to go with the women? No, well, not necessarily. Like, I'm just a person. So I almost enjoyed being put with the blokes for a minute, if that makes sense. I quite enjoyed, like, go on then, we smash a beer.
Feel like a man.
Yeah, you know, it was almost quite nice as well to just, it's very different. I don't live that life. I'm not usually surrounded by 8 blokes, straight men.
Which brings us quite naturally to this year's queer couple, Eve and Charlie. And the Stag and Hen night, Eve, who, at least as a viewer, is presented as the more sort of mask person in that queer female relationship, went on the Hen's night. And Charlie, who's like very femme went on the stag night.
Yep.
And I thought that was quite cool that they mixed that up, because it's unexpected, because they usually, Maths is very
Yes.
into their sort of queer tropes.
You've brought something really interesting up here, and I've never discussed it, and I'm almost scared of discussing it because it makes me nervous. As a gay man, I feel like you can't necessarily say some things sometimes. And I found it really interesting that and they've done it the same this year with the lesbians. The queer women have spoke about their preferences this year and said, you know, I prefer a female who's more feminine, and then the other one has said I prefer more of a masculine energy and that sort of thing. And within my series, Jenna and Zoe, they spoke completely the same, quite boldly and quite often, that was what they wanted. Jenna wanted a more masculine and Zoe wanted a more feminine. And I feel as a gay man, if I said that, I'd be lynched.
That's very interesting.
I think if I said, I'm not attracted to feminine guys, I think as a gay man, I would be lynched for that.
Like if you say sort of mask for mask as a gay man.
Yes, and I don't agree with those sort of things. I don't,
Yeah.
but I think there's also a preference of what you can find attractive at times, and it's difficult sometimes to find the words. So I was so conscious of never, because the producers were pushing me to say that sort of thing. And I was like, are you joking? I'm not saying that. Like, no, that's never coming out of my mouth ever. You'll never get me saying it.
Particularly with the queer couples, when they're matching them, it feels like when, you know, a straight woman says to her gay friend, oh, you love my gay friend. And then it turns out that the only thing you have in common is that you're both gay.
Well, it's interesting when I was first, when you do like the backstory filming, because they really wanted, in hindsight, well, after I'd met Thomas, I sort of knew, they really wanted me to lean into, like, my hair, for instance. Like, I like my hair. I got nice hair. I like it. It's cute. And they really wanted me to lean into, like, oh, you know, talk about doing your hair. And then they really wanted me to lean into, like, my style, my fashion, that sort of things. And I'm like, these things don't really matter to me. And they're like, oh, but you love your style. And I'm like, yeah, I do, but they don't matter. They're not important. It's not something I value. I actually like getting dressed the way I like getting dressed, and I like my hair being nice. But it's not something that I actually value in life. I don't really want to discuss this on television as my values. I mean, musical theatre is 100% my passion, but I love it.
Not just a hobby.
Oh no, that one's a true love of mine. That is my oldest, longest standing love is musical theatre. I love it.
Because Maths sort of represents, I guess, a traditional family setup.
Yes.
You're kind of fitting into like traditional family values in a way, because you're getting married and staying in a monogamous relationship, hopefully.
Yes, and for me personally, as a gay man, which sometimes I think will offend people as well, that is probably my preference. That is what I would like. I've never been in an open relationship. Like, I'm all for it. Like, I have friends who do it, and I'm like, listen, guys, if that works for you, great. It wouldn't work for me. I'd rip my hair out. I couldn't do it. So the more 2.4 children is what I would hope for my life. That fitted me fine. But I think what was interesting, as it went along, I found myself becoming more and more popular. And I think part of that popularity was to do with the fact that I was the non-offensive gay. I'm so easy to fit into the heteronormative world because I'm not there flashing, like, being crazy. I'm not wearing boots, like, you know, I'm not wearing thigh-high boots. I'm not wearing nail paint. I'm not screaming around. Does that make sense? I'm not fitting into those, for want of a better word, camper stereotypes of a gay man. And that weighed on me a little bit because I thought, is this right? Is this fair that I'm necessarily being favoured? Because it's like, oh, well, he's the nice gay one, though. Like, do you know what I mean? And then I started feeling it sort of played with my head a little bit. And, you know, I had a lot of straight men message me just, like, saying, well done, like, mate, like, really great. Like, I was very popular with straight men, which was, I didn't expect.
I guess you were kind of the good gay.
Yes.
I can see how that could feel worse by the fact that your foil, your husband, was the opposite.
Which made me feel guilty
And I can see why it would make you feel guilty, even though...
Because I really wanted to push, I'm not this, and I'm not that out there gay. I've done it. I've been it. You know, I went to drama school in London for my degree. I've trotted around Soho and all sorts. You know, I've done it. I've been through it. And I've enjoyed all of those little phases in my life where I've had crazy hair and I've worn crazy clothes, and now feel like I'm settled in myself and I enjoy my T-shirts and my loafers. And that's, you know, that's where I'm at. But he is still somewhat experimenting with himself and finding his way. And I almost felt... I really wanted to push him to, like, when he wanted to wear the boots. I think he always thought he was going to shock me. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I'm like, oh, babe, nothing. You want to wear a pair of heels? I'll show you how to walk in them because you can't. Like, it was not that big a deal, like, to me. But I think, like, was it interesting going... I'm going on a tangent here, but when we first went on our honeymoon, he had got, on the first day out in the morning, he'd put these, like, I think they were green and black leopard print, sort of like tiny little shorts on, showing half of his arse. And I had like this white Ralph Lauren shirt on with this, I remember the exact outfit, it was this black Prada swimming shorts, white Ralph Lauren shirt on, and I had these Moscot glasses with like the leather rope around them. And he saw that as a massive red flag. He saw me as super, super conservative. So every time he'd pull an outfit out, he'd be like, oh my gosh, you're not going to be okay with the one I'm wearing. I'm like, babes, have one worse. But I don't now. I'm more than happy and comfortable in my nice Ralph Lauren shirt. That's fine for me. And then I eventually pulled him on it, and I was like, you're so concerned about me judging you, that you're judging me.
Did you feel like if you expressed that you weren't super into that, it would make you look bad?
I don't think on the show it would have, and I don't think necessarily publicly it would have, but I think I'd have been lynched by gay publications. That's what I expected. Funny, I should have, though, because you're the first one to go near me. Not one gay publication has spoke to me ever.
Really?
None. The lesbians did loads. They did all the gay magazines, all the gay channels. Nothing for me. Not one, ever. Which I found a little hurtful. And then they all got invited to all the gay awards for the magazines and this and that, and never me. I think it felt to me like I either needed to be the overt gay, like Thomas was, for instance, or a football gay. Like I'm there being a bloke. Like a stereotypical, I play football, I do this, but I just happen to be gay. That's not me, and neither's the other way. And I felt like from the press perception, I just didn't fit neither of those stereotypes, so therefore, it didn't matter.
I think that sometimes the form of sort of campness that like society has become really comfortable with is like drag race campness.
Yes.
It's very flamboyant, it's very out there, and it's like, you know, the Tesco rainbow meal deal and like rainbow flags, and that's great. That's really important. That's a very, very important
phenomenal
part
representation, and I think it's really important to have that representation. I think, and then you go the other way, which is completely different. And then that sort of flags people's attention because they play football and they go to the pub with their mates of a Friday and they're all men, but he's gay, and wow, that's so exciting. When then you've got that middle ground, and I'm you know, a lot of the time the experts would say things to me like, you know, you're very healed, you've been through your stuff and you've worked through it, and I feel like I'm comfortable and confident and happy, and I think I showed on television a character that was emotionally able to manage situations and be kind and considerate, and that just didn't really, those qualities didn't count for anything. Probably would have been better had I whipped out a gay flag with a rainbow on it. When Thomas was, like, you know, when he wanted to wear the boots and wear, you know, all of his, you know, he'd go around everywhere with his rainbow bag, and he constantly do it. You fly that flag. You fly that flag, and I will proudly, very, extremely proudly, in my plain Jane blue suit or whatever colour I wore that week, I will walk and hold your arm as you strut yourself in those silver boots, and I will be the proudest man in the world of you. On that sort of representation, it was really important, and he felt very important. He felt that it was important to do it, and I also really wanted to support him and show. I mean, I was like, "You got to walk. You can't do this badly. You got to walk well in these heels, Thomas. You are at this. You need to practice in those boots." But it was really important for both of us, I think, to be representation. And I think it was interesting to see the four of us on the show, the four openly queer people on the show, wildly different.
Yeah. And I guess, like, that is the thing that reality TV affords queer people, is that you do get that chance to kind of represent a bit about, like, what your relationships could be, who you could be as people, to, I mean, especially in your case, like, to a very mainstream, mostly straight audience, whereas I Kissed a Girl, I Kissed a Boy are probably, you know, I mean, I guess it's on a very mainstream platform, but it's speaking very much to the community.
Personally, me as a queer person, I think one flip of a switch, one wrong government, and we could be again. Like, you know, we could go, you know, how many countries is there that this is not, you know, I've seen so many countries who've made it illegal. Never mind, like, not making it illegal. And it's been illegal for years. It wasn't illegal, and now it is illegal. Petrifies me. And I think one switch, and, you know, we all say, you know, we would all revolt and we would this, probably wouldn't be able to. So this, for all I know, in 10 years I could be in prison for being a queer. So that's why these things concern me.
So you had one of the all-time Hall of Fame quotes when you were on Maths.
What is it?
Which was during the dinner party. You had a really leading producer question, which is, what would you change about your husband? Right. And you said, I would change situations in life that have led you to your defenses, which was, I think, one of the most articulate things anyone said on a reality TV show, and very unexpected. And I kind of want to know a little bit about where that came from and, like, how you were able to think of that in the moment, because that is such a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I don't know why I'm quiet. I don't know why I haven't spoken about this in a while. I think it's so sad that, like, I always think there's so many things that happen to being a queer person. Like, it's almost like, you know, it's like I didn't really enter the world until I was 21 and able to begin to process comfortably. And so for me, it's a really important, like, subject for me, because I think it's so sad that it's not even, like, recognized, the amount of, you know, things that my 5-year-old self and 10-year-old self and, you know, all those things that you didn't even get, you know, there'd be so much come your way for being a gay kid, but you weren't even comfortable enough to talk to your parents about it. So it's awful. And then as you get older, it gets worse. And, you know, there's so many situations that queer people land themselves in that it's not recognised. I didn't get that. So that sort of subject is just super sensitive to me. And so for me, Thomas was just a walking result of what had happened to him. And I think I used to be a walking result of what had happened to me. But I've been able to work on it, and he hasn't had that opportunity yet, or hadn't at the time. And so I just wanted to just let him know I can see what's behind there, but I also see that it's there. And I'm acknowledging that it's there, and I wish it wasn't, and I'd take it away if I could. Like, you know, you would want for any queer people.
I think that, like, you know, the drama between individuals is, like, entertaining at the time. But when when you're looking back and reflecting back, it's like, what's the actual impact that you make on the show? And I think that when you had that conversation with Thomas, it was clearly not what he was expecting. It was clearly not what the producers were expecting, not what the experts were expecting. And it was very touching and warm and supportive. And I think that that is why, you know, you can think why you were so popular and wonder why. But I think it was just because you came across as really supportive to someone who was maybe still figuring out their queer journey. And I think one thing I thought was that maybe that was kind of why they'd paired you with him, is that they knew that you could be supportive to him.
Yes.
But then I wondered whether that was a bit unfair on you, because it meant that you were basically someone's therapist for 10 weeks.
Well, you know, on the TV show, and then while it was there, and so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, you're so good for Thomas. You're so good for Thomas. You're so good for Thomas. You're so good for Thomas." And I was like, "Well, who's good for me? No one's perfect." But I've worked a lot on myself in the past 10 years. I think, particularly the last 5 years, I've worked a lot on myself, and I have got through some of my insecurities, and I used to be. I mean, on the TV show, I'm very calm. People really commended me for being calm and for being able to manage some quite extreme scenarios. Oh, years ago, I'd have been the one that my friends were concerned about. And it wasn't great, but I'd have been the mouth. I'd have been the problem. I'd have caused the rows. I'd have been a lot more similar to Thomas years ago. So I think I can see myself being that defensive mouth, because he's so defensive, because he's not been able to figure out that he doesn't need to be anymore. And so I think that's what I could see in him. Like, I've done this. I've been this guy when I've dived down every throat, or I'm ready for a fight. I'm ready for a fight. Well, now I'm not ready for a fight now. I don't need to fight. If you want to fight, go and fight with someone else. If you have a problem with me being queer, not a bother. I'm really not bothered. I do not care. I will not lose a wink of sleep. You have a lovely time and go away from me. Like, don't be in my vicinity. I'm sitting here, you leave, or I'll leave. Where Thomas would want to lean into that. And so that was difficult for him. And so I just wanted to make him know that that's not necessary anymore.
Yeah.
You can relax.
And just to talk a bit more about like this current season that we're on.
Yeah.
So the couples have all been married. We've had the first commitment ceremony and we've had the first dinner party. That's the point that we're at as of recording this.
It was a good dinner party as well.
Oh God, it went off.
It did. No, do you know what? I like this season so far. I think it's good. I mean, I think they got questions that should be answered a bit better than what they have with certain people. I'm not going into that because it's nothing to do with me. But they shouldn't do it, but it's what it is. They can't. Women's Aid always have to pipe up every season.
That shouldn't be a pattern which repeats every year.
No, it's not cool. Stop it. If Women's Aid have to pipe up, I messaged them on Instagram and I was like, I'm so sorry that you guys have to speak up every time. They actually responded, which was lovely.
So what do you think that the couples who are now rewatching their maths journey, it's just started rewatching their maths journey, what do you think they're feeling right now? What were you feeling at this point?
It's a lot to get used to. I think there's a lot to get used to. And I think the worst part about it is it finishes at like 10, half 10. So you're wired. At like 10:30 at night, you are wired because you're like, what's going on? And people would say like, is it weird watching yourself on TV? And it wasn't. It was almost like reliving the emotions that you had at the time. It didn't feel like you're watching yourself on telly. It felt like you're reliving it. And so that was quite emotional. It was quite a lot. I think it's so difficult. Like, I have a lot of people come to me via Instagram or, sometimes people just see me in the street or whatever, and they'll say, I'm thinking about applying. What do you think? And I'm like, be very careful. Be very careful. You have to be very mentally okay to do this because it's a very large platform. Like, I couldn't go for a pint of milk in the co-op without someone stopping me. Like, I was stopped constantly on the streets, and it's a big show now. So you are catapulted very quickly, and it goes so closely to your character. Like, it's not a 3-week show. It's not a 10 episodes. It's 36 episodes of people following you around constantly. People get very close with you, and on the show, the producers constantly said to us, don't be fake, because eventually the mask will slip. And they did. Everyone who was sort of trying to show something that they were choosing to show, eventually their reality's shown. And that's just it's a dangerous little game. Some people were not in a good way mentally after our show. So I personally am like, if you're going to go on it, be careful. It's not like a fun show, is it? Where you're, race across the world. It's emotional, and you are feeling those emotions at the time. Sometimes you're broken. I hid once because I didn't want to film, so I went and hid in another bedroom because I knew they couldn't find me because I was just too tired and I was too emotional. But then you also get exhausted. Like, I remember sitting on the sofa with the experts once, and something got said, and I burst out crying. And they were like, are you... And I cried loads, to be fair. But they were like, are you all right? Like, what is wrong? And I was like, I gave an answer, but I knew at the time my answer was, I think I'm just knackered. I've got nothing's wrong with me. I'm just so tired. Like, it's an emotional drain. And that's only one section, isn't it? You've got the filming section, and then you've got the time when it airs on TV. And, if you discuss, like, this is Gay Star News, so let's discuss some queer things. Ella had some terrible... I remember being on the phone to Ella at one point, and, she was worried sometimes of going to the shop, because she was worried of what... it's nice to get attention, and Ella loves attention. We all like attention. You don't go on TV if you're scared of attention. But I'd never thought of it until Ella, and I was like, this could be dangerous attention for you. That's very worrying, So it's not all, it can be concerning. It's not like you're going to get a bodyguard. One of my friends from Love Island, where she won Love Island, and she was telling me a few weeks ago that when she first came off, they gave her, not a bodyguard, but kind of, whatever the word is. But it was for like a week or something. And she was like, oh, am I fine now? Like, and they were like, well, that's what we've got in budget. I'm like, right, okay. Like, that's quite scary, isn't it?
Like, Love Island is, definitely when that season was on, like, the biggest TV show, maybe in the world, actually, when it was on. And you become literally one of the most famous people in the world for the period that you're relevant. And during that period, like, you have no time to adjust to fame because you're literally, Love Island, you're literally sheltered in a villa,
yeah,
away
and Love
from
Island's
the real
different,
world.
isn't it? Because it's airing while you're doing it, where we film it and then we have like a couple of months break and then it comes on TV.
Yeah.
Like, we finished filming in July and then it was on in September. So it's a very different process to they walk out to that, where I felt like I remember the first time someone stopped me in the street for a selfie, and then that got a little more, and then that got probably too much. Especially if, like, I wouldn't go into Manchester City Centre near like the beginning of the show. I would just be like, it was too much. All lovely. I really enjoyed the whole experience of the fame thing. I thought it was lovely. I had such a nice time. But yeah, it can be worrying and quite a shock, and not everyone can put up with it. Talking
of becoming one of the most famous people in the country for a moment.
For a minute, yeah.
Yeah. How's that like when you've not also like had the chance to kind of build up the cash that you would usually get as a celebrity? So how was that? Like, obviously there were probably expectations on you to look a certain way, travel. How was that?
Yeah, so on Maths, I spent a fortune for the filming of it. I spent so much money on clothes, so much money, because I wanted to present myself as best as I could. But gosh, it was expensive. And then you come out, and, you've got to go to this event and this event and this event. And even though a lot of the time these events are free, so this is a first world problem, but at the same time, you've got to get taxis there, or you're getting trains, or you're trying your best to get them to get a train, or it's in London, and then where are you going to stay? And then you sort of feel like a bit of a beg. You're getting photographed constantly photographed. Everywhere you go, you're getting photographed. You're in the Daily Mail every 10 minutes. And you don't want to be wearing the same thing every time. You want to change it up, and so it gets expensive, and then you're going to nice events with nice brands, and everyone also assumes that you're rich because you're on telly. Everyone's just, oh, obviously they're minted. I'm like, I'm scared. Are you joking? I spent all my money on suits. I've got so many suits now.
Do you remember how much you spent in total on clothes when you were on the show? Are you given any budget during the weeks after the wedding as well?
No, not at all. You are given a budget for the wedding day. That's it. And then, every dinner party, they want you to look nice. And because I wore loads of nice outfits, took care of myself, made sure I presented myself well, but they then liked that. But I'm like, no one's paying for this, though. Like, we'd be getting orders constantly. In your free time, you'd be going on to Zara or something to try and get suits. Yeah, it's expensive. I think all in all, I probably spent, oh gosh, I hate this. It's so embarrassing. It is. But I think all in all, I spent about $5,000 on clothes on the show.
That's kind of what I expected.
Yeah.
Because if you want to buy a new suit or at least new shirts.
It's a new,
like twice a week, basically. Because also you got the commitment
commitment ceremony. So you got a nice outfit for the commitment ceremony and a nice outfit for the dinner party. It's going to rack up. So, I mean, I still wear those clothes all the time. So I don't buy many trend things. I tend to usually go with the classic. So if I put my money into something, I want it to last. And I stopped spending money after about 6 months of being off it, and going to events all the time. I was like, I'm not buying a new outfit every event now. I can't. I'm going to make this work because it's just not cool and it's not necessary. And some people would say, oh gosh, you've worn that before. And I'm like, yeah. And what?
There have already been a few discussions about body image on this season. And
gosh, I was hoping you wouldn't discuss this, but yeah, go on.
Obviously, Married at First Sight is a show where you're supposed to be kind of blind in a way to what someone looks like. And you might express a preference. Do you think that, because the girls that have been on this year already,
Yep.
two of them have basically been sort of criticised by their partner for the way that they look. I don't know why they weren't paired with someone that appreciated what they looked like, however they looked like, you know. What's your view on this?
Oh gosh. Again, I'm always slightly wary of what I say and how I end up being told off. Because I do get told off a fair bit. My friends tell me off. So for me on this, it's not an easy answer. So first and foremost, I would say to those blokes, I think this would be my first message, how you have given the message that you are not attracted to these women is shit. Grow up, stop being horrible. You don't have to fancy them. Lead with kindness. Don't be a prick. And curves and size should not come into it. Not at all. Even if it mentally does, and it might do, don't say it. Just don't fucking say it. We don't have to say everything that comes into our heads. Like, it's okay just to not say it. And that doesn't make you dishonest. It makes you considerate of someone's feelings.
Especially when you're both on TV.
You also, yes, you're on TV and you're saying that about someone. Don't do that. But then you've also got, you know, what's his name? Adam. Mm-hmm. Now, he's getting ripped left, right and centre, and I've ripped him myself, to be fair, but whatever. But he is so obviously that pretty typical dickhead who's like, I want this bed, that bed, this bed, that bed. But whether we agree with that or not, whether that's nice or not, that is what he is. And he's not shy about it. So why have you matched him with her? Why have you done that? Because actually, are you putting that woman in quite the firing line to be hurt in a normal circumstance, never mind on fucking television, on probably, at the moment, the biggest platform in the UK.
I mean, is it an irresponsibility?
I think so. I've said it already. I said it on my TikTok, I think. I don't agree with it. I think it is irresponsible. And that's when I go back to it being tricky. When people say to me, should I apply? I'm like, be careful. Be careful. You know, because I think this is what's important as well with this subject, is that if looks don't matter or shouldn't matter, and they take that stance, that's fine. Why have you asked me 85 times then what my type is? Whether I like tall, dark, handsome, big, short. You've asked me all of these physical attributes. So if you are, what? And I didn't give any. And that's not because I don't like physical attributes about certain men, I do. But they're all different. Like, if you line my exes up, they are worlds apart. Like, all of them, they look nothing like each other. So I'm just not very good. I don't actually know my type. I just know it when I see it. But you ask all these questions about physical attributes. So if it's not important, then why did you ask it?
I think it's setting both of them up for failure in the relationship. I
felt bad for Casper when he was like, why did you do this? You're with my life. Now, that's not... I always feel somewhat guilty. Not guilty, but I feel for even the blokes in these scenarios when I'm like, you didn't ask for this, though. And, what Thomas asked for a black guy. Look at me. I'm about to jump out of the Sound of Music. You know, fuck's sake. Thomas was 100,000% my note list. And that's not to say, you know, in the end, we didn't have a wonderful time and there was so many wonderful attributes about him. But Thomas was my note list. And they're not, even his wonderful attributes, some of them, they're not necessarily what I'm looking for in a partner. I don't blame them for it. It's TV. It'd be boring if everyone got on, wouldn't it? It would be. But I think in this sort of scenario, no, it's not cool.
Where do you think we're going to go with this new season of Maths?
I think there's going to be some pretty tricky bumps in the road. And I think that these women have got a lot to handle. And do you know one more thing? Holly, I think she is doing a phenomenal job. And I really, because she's quite a mouthy character, I really want people to be able to see how intelligent she is and how emotionally mature she is for dealing with what she's actually dealing with. She deals with it. She speaks about it. She's also open to be upset about these things. She can be emotional and she can rationalize it. I think she's doing a phenomenal job. So at the moment, Holly, 10/10. And I hope that she goes the whole way. And I do not hope it's with him.
Yeah, well, T. Well, thank you very much, Adrian, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I've been Helen Meriel Thomas. This has been Adrian Sanderson. Thank you so much for joining us for The Spills. See you again soon.